No one ever paid much attention to the abandoned house on Hollister Lane. It leaned heavily to one side, as if weighed down by the years of whispers and secrets trapped within its rotting walls. Kids in our neighborhood told stories about it, of course. About lights flickering behind broken windows, about soft knocking that came from deep within the foundation. But adults dismissed it all as nonsense. That was until Amina came to town. Amina was different from the start. She was small, pale, and her eyes, those pale gray eyes, seemed to look straight through you even though she was completely blind. At least that's what everyone said. Her aunt had enrolled her in our school midway through the semester. No one knew much about her family. No one asked too many questions. Small towns don't like to poke too hard at things they don't understand. I first met Amina in the library, tucked away behind a towering wall of old encyclopedias. She was humming softly to herself, tracing the spines of the books with delicate fingers. I remember thinking she looked like a doll someone had forgotten, too fragile for a place like this. When she turned towards me, her unseeing eyes somehow locked perfectly onto mine. Froze. Her mouth tilted into a small, sad smile. "You have a shadow," she said quietly. It meant nothing to me at the time. Kids say strange things. I laughed it off, made some awkward excuse, and left her there among the dust and books. But later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing at the foot of my bed, watching, waiting. Over the next few weeks, strange things started happening. It began with small incidents. The lights in my house would flicker violently whenever I passed certain rooms, even though the bulbs were new. My reflection in the bathroom mirror seemed a split second slower than my movements. I would hear faint breathing behind me in empty hallways. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Stress maybe. Anxiety. Anything but what Amina had said. Then came the night of the bonfire. Our school held it every fall out in the clearing behind the woods. It was tradition. Hot dogs, scary stories, and games of chicken that usually ended with someone running screaming through the trees. This year was no different, except that Amina showed up. No one had invited her. She stood at the edge of the clearing just beyond the firelight, staring, or maybe listening, with her head tilted strangely to one side. I don't know why, but seeing her there unsettled me more than the dozens of horror stories people were trading around the fire. At some point, in the middle of one of Tyler Becker's ghost stories, Amina spoke. Her voice was barely louder than the crackle of the fire, but somehow everyone heard her. "It's coming," she said. The whole clearing fell silent. "What's coming, freak?" Tyler snorted, trying to shake off the sudden tension. Few kids laughed nervously, but Amina only shook her head. Slowly, she raised a trembling hand and pointed into the darkness of the woods. "It's here," she whispered. And then the fire exploded outward, a gust of wind so strong it knocked half of us over. Sparks danced like angry fireflies into the night sky. Screams echoed through the clearing. Someone yelled about the fuel tanks tipping over. Someone else called for a teacher. In the chaos, I lost sight of Amina. Ran. I didn't even think about it. I ran harder than I ever had in my life, pushing through the dense trees, not stopping until my lungs felt like they were filled with acid. When I finally looked back, the clearing was a mess of smoke and shouting figures. But out in the woods, far from the fire, standing as still as a gravestone between two ancient oaks, I saw her, Mina, and something else. For just a second, silhouetted against the rising smoke, there was a figure standing beside her. It was impossibly tall and thin, draped in something blacker than the night itself. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, mirroring Amina's posture. I blinked and it was gone. The next morning the school cancelled classes. The official story was that it had been a freak accident. Some blamed the wind, others said someone had spiked the bonfire fuel. But I knew better. So did a few others. We exchanged wary glances in the halls, avoided talking about it. Amina never came back to school after that. Rumors started, of course. Some said she'd been sent away. Others said she'd vanished completely. I didn't know what to believe, and honestly, I didn't want to get involved. But a week later, when I found a note stuffed into my locker, folded neatly, written in a shaky, childlike hand. I knew I couldn't ignore it. It said, "Come to the house. You have to see it too." No name. No explanation. Just that. First I thought about throwing it away, pretending I never saw it. But something gnawed at me. The way Amina had spoken that night, the terror in her voice, the thing in the woods. I had to know the truth. Had to. The house on Hollister Lane was even worse up close. Its windows were gaping holes like black, empty eyes. The front door hung from one hinge, swaying gently in the autumn breeze. Dead leaves littered the porch like discarded bones. I hesitated on the cracked stone path, heart hammering in my chest. Part of me screamed to turn around, to forget about Amina, to run and never look back. But curiosity, the kind that rots you from the inside out, drove me forward. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. Each step I took sent clouds of dust swirling in the thin shafts of light that pierced the broken walls. The floorboards creaked beneath my weight, loud as gunshots in the oppressive silence. I found her in what must have once been the living room. Amina stood in the center of the room, her arms hanging limply at her sides. Her head was still tilted, but now her blind eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the crumbling ceiling. When she spoke, her voice was so low I had to strain to hear it. "You see it now, don't you?" I wanted to ask what she meant. I wanted to demand answers. But then the temperature dropped. A freezing gust of air rushed past me, rattling the broken windows. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to lengthen, thickening like blood. Out of the corner of my eye, something moved. I spun around. Nothing. When I turned back to Amina, she was pointing again, this time at a doorway that led deeper into the house. Her hand shook violently, and her lips moved in a frantic, soundless whisper. I didn't want to go. Every instinct in my body told me to get out of that house. But I moved toward the doorway anyway, as if pulled by invisible strings. The hallway beyond was even darker. Only the faintest sliver of light illuminated the sagging floor and peeling wallpaper. I stepped forward, the air growing colder with each breath. Ahead, something loomed in the darkness, something big. Stop. There, crouched against the far wall, was a figure. It was wrong. Too many joints, arms bent the wrong way, a head that seemed to float loosely above its shoulders. It shivered, as if laughing silently to itself. And then it turned toward me. Its face, or what might have once been a face, was a mess of gaping holes, oozing darkness. No eyes, no mouth. Just pits. Empty, yet somehow filled with a hunger that made my stomach twist violently. I stumbled backward, slamming into the doorframe. Amina's voice, suddenly clear and piercing, sliced through the thick air. "Don't look at it." But it was too late. Already had. The thing surged forward, faster than anything that size should have been able to move. I tried to scream, to run, but my legs locked up. My vision swam. All I could do was watch as it reached for me with hands like splintered branches. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I wasn't in the house anymore. The world around me was a smear of shifting gray, like a heavy fog pressing against my skin. My body ached, my limbs numb as if they belonged to someone else. I tried to move, but the ground beneath me felt sticky, almost alive. For a terrible second I thought I was still dreaming. But then I heard it, the slow, deliberate breathing of something just out of sight. I squeezed my eyes shut. Maybe if I didn't look, maybe if I pretended hard enough, it would go away. A soft whisper coiled around me like smoke. "You looked too long." It wasn't Amina's voice. It was deeper, colder, like metal scraping against stone. I forced myself to open my eyes. Shapes flickered at the edges of my vision, elongated figures, twitching and jittering as if caught between frames of a film. They didn't move naturally. They shuddered. In the distance, beyond the mist, I saw a faint, flickering light. A doorway. A way out. Every instinct screamed that moving toward it was the only choice. So I staggered upright, ignoring the sticky pull of the ground, and limped toward the light. Every step felt like trudging through molasses, each movement a battle. I didn't dare look back at the shapes whispering my name. The light grew brighter, more defined, until it formed the outline of a door hanging open in the middle of the fog. Beyond it was darkness, but a normal kind of darkness, the kind I could understand. I stumbled through. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air snapped back into sharp, icy clarity. I was back inside the house, the real house, collapsed against the floor of the living room. The rotted ceiling above me sagged dangerously. Somewhere nearby, the wind howled through broken glass. But Amina was gone. I scrambled to my feet, calling her name. My voice echoed strangely through the ruined house. No answer. The only sound was the groaning of old wood under the weight of the years. I wanted to leave. I should have left. But something deep inside me, something primal and stubborn, said I couldn't. Not without her. Pushing down the fear clawing at my throat, I moved deeper into the house. The layout made no sense. Hallways twisted at impossible angles. Doors led to staircases that spiraled downward into places that shouldn't have existed. The wallpaper was covered in strange symbols, scratched deep into the surface. They seemed to shift when I wasn't looking directly at them, forming crude shapes of watching eyes. After what felt like hours, I found another room, different from the others. It was almost pristine compared to the decay around it. The wallpaper here was clean, the floor intact. In the center of the room stood a large, antique mirror. Its surface was cloudy, but beneath the haze, I could see faint reflections. Or rather, I should have seen them. Because when I looked, I didn't see myself. I saw Amina. She was standing with her back to the glass, head bowed, arms limp at her sides. Behind her loomed a towering figure, its face obscured by a shifting mass of black tendrils. The thing's hands rested lightly on her shoulders like a puppeteer with a favorite doll. As I watched in horror, Amina raised her head, and for the first time I saw her eyes clearly. They were no longer gray. They were pitch black, oozing shadow, stretching down her cheeks like tears. And she was smiling. I stumbled back, heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. The mirror rippled like disturbed water, and for one terrible moment, I thought the thing inside would step through. But it didn't. Instead, Amina spoke. "Don't you see it now?" Her voice was wrong. Too loud, too sharp, echoing from every direction at once. I shook my head, backing toward the door. "You saw it," she continued, her reflection smiling wider. "Now it sees you." I turned and bolted from the room. The house seemed determined to keep me there. Doors that had been opened slammed shut. Hallways stretched into endless corridors. Every corner I turned, I felt the thing drawing closer. Heard the soft tap-tap-tap of Amina's cane even though she wasn't there. Or maybe she was. I don't know how long I ran. Time lost all meaning inside that place. My only focus was escape, somehow, someway. I needed to get back to the real world. Back to the light. Finally, I found a window that hadn't been boarded up. Without thinking, I hurled myself through it, landing hard on the overgrown lawn outside. Pain flared up my side, but I didn't stop to assess the damage. I just ran, leaving the house and its terrible occupant behind. The sun was rising, bleeding pale gold across the horizon. Birds sang. The normal sounds of the waking world washed over me, so sharp and bright it almost hurt. I collapsed under a tree at the edge of the woods, gasping for air, heart still racing. I thought it was over, but deep down I knew better. The signs started almost immediately after. At school, reflections of me lingered too long in windows. I would catch glimpses of myself in the corner of my eye, but the other me wasn't always doing the same thing. Sometimes it would be smiling when I wasn't. Sometimes it would be staring at something just over my shoulder. Lights would flicker violently when I entered a room. Dogs would growl low and wary when I passed by. Even my friends began acting differently around me. Nervous, unsettled, as if they could sense something was wrong. And then the dreams began. Every night, I found myself back in the house, wandering endless hallways while unseen things whispered in languages I couldn't understand. Every morning, I woke up more exhausted than before. I tried to ignore it. I tried to live my life. But the feeling of being watched grew stronger, heavier. Shadows clung to me even in bright daylight. One afternoon while walking home from school I saw her, Mina, standing across the street, tapping her cane slowly against the asphalt. Her head tilted to one side, her blackened eyes locked onto mine. Cars passed between us, but she remained perfectly still, untouched by the noise and chaos around her. And blinked. She was gone. I ran home, locking every door, drawing every curtain. But the moment I turned from the window, she was there, standing in my living room, silent, waiting. I didn't scream. I couldn't. She raised her hand, pointing to something behind me. Slowly, against every instinct screaming inside me, I turned. There, standing in the darkest corner of the room, was the thing from the mirror, the puppet master. Its tendrils writhed slowly in the gloom, reaching for me with long, spidery fingers. Amina's voice, soft and broken, echoed in my mind. You saw it. Now it sees you. Before I could move, the world tilted violently. A cold, slimy hand brushed against my back. I staggered forward, and everything around me dissolved into darkness. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in the fog again. The endless gray wasteland stretched before me, empty except for one thing. The house rising like a black wound against the sky. The door swung open, waiting, welcoming. I realized then that escape had never been an option. The moment I had looked, truly seen, I had bound myself to it. Just like Amina. The last thing I heard before stepping toward the house was her voice, distant and hollow. Now it's your turn. The ground was soft beneath my feet as I walked toward the house. The sky a heavy canvas of gray pressing down from above. The fog parted only enough for me to see the battered front door yawning open, a black hole waiting to swallow me whole. I hesitated at the threshold. My heart was hammering against my ribs, screaming at me to turn back, to run, to fight. But there was no fight left in me. Only the hollow understanding that there was nowhere else to go. No way back. This place had become my reality now. I stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening crack. I whirled around, but there was nothing there. Only darkness, so thick it felt like a living thing brushing against my skin. The house seemed different this time, less decayed, more alive. The walls pulsed gently, like the inside of a throat. Every breath I took echoed back at me, distorted, wrong. And somewhere deep within the house, I heard the cane tapping again. Amina was close. I moved cautiously through the hallways, the floorboards groaning under my weight. I didn't know what I was looking for. Some way to undo what had been done. Some bargain I could strike. But with every step, the house seemed to shift, rearranging itself like a living labyrinth. Doors led to nowhere. Windows looked out onto scenes that couldn't possibly exist. Graveyards of rotting houses, oceans of black tar, endless forests of writhing trees. And sometimes, just for a moment, I caught glimpses of myself in the reflective surfaces. Only it wasn't really me. It was the other version, the one from the mirror, watching, grinning, waiting. I found her in a room at the very center of the house. Amina stood in front of a massive mural that covered the entire wall. The painting was grotesque and beautiful all at once, a swirling nightmare of faces, hands, eyes. Some of the faces were screaming, some were smiling, and some were empty, hollow voids. She turned when she heard me approach. Her eyes were still black, but something in them had changed. There was sadness there, regret. "You shouldn't have come," she said quietly, her voice barely more than a breath. "I didn't have a choice," I replied. "You know that." She nodded, lowering her head. "It's too late for you now," she whispered. "It chose you. Just like it chose me." "What is it?" I asked, my voice cracking. She hesitated, fingers twitching at her sides. "They call it the Watcher," she said. "It's older than this house. Older than anything. Feeds on those who see beyond the surface of things. Those who notice what they shouldn't." I thought about the day I met her. How strange everything had felt afterward. How once I saw her, really saw her, everything started unraveling. "The house is a trap," Amina continued. A snare. It lures in anyone who starts to see. Pulls them into its web. I stepped closer. There has to be a way out. Her smile was so sad it made my chest ache. There's only one way, she said. But it's not what you think. Before I could ask what she meant, the ground shuddered violently. The mural on the wall began to ripple and move, the faces within it twisting, reaching out with desperate, grasping hands. The watcher was coming. Amina seized my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Listen to me, she hissed. You have to find the eye. The eye? He echoed, confused. She nodded frantically. It sees everything. It's the only thing the watcher fears. But it's hidden deep, past the threshold. Another tremor shook the house. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cracks spider-webbed across the walls. Go, she cried, shoving me toward a hidden door that had appeared behind the mural. I stumbled through, and the door slammed shut behind me. I found myself in a narrow, spiraling staircase descending into blackness. No light, no handrail, just endless stone steps leading down and down and down. With no other choice, I began to descend. The air grew colder the deeper I went. The walls wept moisture. Strange symbols were carved into the stone, glowing faintly with a sickly green light. I didn't recognize the language, but somehow I understood their meaning. Warnings. Turn back. Too late. After what felt like an eternity, the staircase ended in a vast cavern. The ceiling was lost in shadows. Stalactites dripped black liquid that hissed when it hit the ground. In the center of the cavern was a raised platform, and atop it a massive pulsing orb. A grotesque imitation of an eye, lidless and unblinking, its surface swirling with colors and shapes that hurt to look at. I knew immediately this was the eye Amina spoke of. But I wasn't alone. Between me and the eye stood a figure. It wasn't the watcher, not exactly. This thing was smaller, more human-shaped, but its body was wrong. It twisted and jerked like a marionette with tangled strings. Its face was a blur, constantly shifting between expressions of rage, sorrow, glee. It spoke without moving its mouth. You don't belong here. I backed away, but the figure lunged forward with terrifying speed, seizing my wrist in a grip like iron. Pain flared through my arm and I cried out. You looked, it said, voice dripping with malice. Now you will serve. Images flooded my mind. Visions of the house consuming souls, of the watcher feasting on those trapped within its walls, of myself, standing beside Amina, blind and smiling, waiting for the next to stumble in. No, I gasped, struggling against its grip. I won't. Summoning strength I didn't know I had, I twisted free and sprinted toward the platform. The figure shrieked behind me, its voice splintering the air like broken glass. I reached the eye and, without thinking, slammed my hand against its surface. For a moment nothing happened. Then the world exploded. I was standing outside the house. The sun was high and warm on my face. Birds chirped. The grass was green and soft beneath my feet. For a blissful second I thought it was over. But then I noticed the people. Dozens of them, standing motionless around the house, their faces blank, their eyes black as tar. Some were children. Some were adults. Some were old and frail. And standing among them was Amina. She wasn't blind anymore. Her eyes were clear and filled with tears. She mouthed one word. Run. Before I could move, the house groaned, its front door splitting open as a torrent of black tendrils surged outward, reaching for me. Ran. Through the field into the woods, my lungs burning, heart ready to explode. I didn't look back. Couldn't. If I did, I knew I'd never stop running. Finally, when I collapsed beneath a tree miles away, I realized something chilling. I wasn't alone. A figure stood at the edge of the woods, watching. Not Amina. Not the puppet. Something else. The watcher itself. Its endless eyes bore into me. And though I tried to look away, part of me understood. Once you see the truth, you can never unsee it. You can run from the house. But you can't run from what's inside you now. The watcher was a part of me. And it was patient. Could wait. Would wait. until I led someone else to see. The days that followed blurred together in a fever dream of dread. I tried to pretend it was over, that maybe, just maybe, I had escaped. I returned home, back to my tiny apartment with its peeling paint and broken radiator. I went back to my routines, work, groceries, aimless wandering through life. But nothing was the same. First it was small things. Shadows that didn't belong. Faces in windows where there shouldn't be anyone. Whispers just at the edge of hearing. I told myself it was trauma. After all, how could anyone go through something like that and not come back a little broken? But deep down I knew better. The Watcher had followed me. It was inside me. At night I dreamed of the house. I walked its endless halls, its pulsing walls breathing around me. I saw Amina waiting at the top of the stairs, her face blank, her arms outstretched. And always, the Watcher loomed somewhere just out of sight, its countless eyes blinking in the dark. One night, I woke to find something standing at the foot of my bed. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It only watched. When I turned on the light, it was gone. I barely slept after that. My coworkers noticed first. The hollow look in my eyes. The way I jumped at every sound. The way I avoided mirrors, windows, anything reflective. "You okay?" Sarah, the receptionist, asked me one morning, concern etched deep into her face. "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. She didn't believe me. No one did. The Watcher was eating away at me, and I didn't know how to stop it. A week later everything changed. I was sitting in a cafe, nursing a cup of cold coffee, staring blankly out the window at the endless gray drizzle. The streets were nearly empty, the few passers-by huddling beneath umbrellas like wilted flowers. That's when I saw her. A girl maybe 10 years old, standing perfectly still in the rain. No umbrella, no coat. Just a simple white dress that clung to her thin frame. She was staring directly at me. Her eyes, God, her eyes, were black as the deepest void, just like Amina's had been. I knew what I had to do. I bolted from the cafe, the bell above the door jangling wildly. The rain was icy against my skin, soaking me to the bone in seconds, but I didn't care. I ran to her. As I drew closer, she smiled. Not a child's smile. Something older. Hungrier. Without a word, she turned and began to walk away, her bare feet slapping wetly against the pavement. And like a puppet with strings tied to my limbs, I followed. She led me through twisting alleys and abandoned lots, places that seemed forgotten by the world. The further we went, the more the city seemed to decay around us. Buildings crumbling, streetlights flickering and dying, garbage piling up in festering mounds. And all the while, the Watcher's presence pressed against me, heavier with every step. Finally she stopped before a door. It was old, rotted, hanging askew in its frame. Beyond it, darkness yawned like an open grave. The girl turned to me, still smiling. "This is your choice," she said in a voice that was not a child's. "Enter and see. Or turn away and wither." I shook my head, stepping back. "No, I'm done. I won't." "Then it will feast on you where you stand," she said simply. And I understood. The Watcher wasn't content to wait anymore. It was hungry. And I was out of time. With a shuddering breath, I stepped through the door. The world twisted. The ground dropped away beneath my feet. Colors bled from the world, running down the walls like melting paint. I landed in a place that defied logic. A vast, endless plain under a sky that churned with black storms. Structures like broken bones jutted from the ground. Rivers of blood and ash flowed through cracked earth. At the center of it all, rising high into the storm, was the house. Not as it had been. It was monstrous now, a living cathedral of writhing wood and flesh, its windows gaping like mouths, its roof crowned with twitching spires. And wrapped around it like a lover, the Watcher coiled. Saw me immediately. 1,000 eyes snapped open, fixing on me with a hunger that made my knees buckle. "You came back," it said, though its mouth never moved. I tried to speak, but no words came. The girl appeared beside me, her form flickering like a candle about to go out. You must choose, she said, her voice barely audible over the shrieking wind. Serve or break the chain. How? Croaked. She pointed to the house. The heart. Destroy it. I stared at the towering monstrosity, feeling despair sink its claws into me. How could I destroy something like that? But there was no other choice. If I served, I would become like Amina, blind, hollow, a lure for others. Slave. If I fought, maybe I could end it. Maybe. Gathering every shred of courage left in me, I began the long walk toward the house. The ground trembled with every step. The watcher's tendrils lashed out, but the girl walked ahead of me, her tiny figure blazing with a cold silver light that repelled them. We reached the porch, the boards squirming beneath our feet like worms. The front door swung open on its own, revealing a yawning darkness within. Without hesitation, I stepped inside. The interior was a nightmare. The walls pulsed and writhed, covered in thousands of eyes that watched my every move. The floor was slick with blood. The air stank of rot and despair. But there, deep within the house, I felt it. The heart. Pulsing. Waiting. I pushed forward, the house trying to stop me at every turn. Doors slammed shut. Floors collapsed. Specters of lost souls shrieked and clawed at me. But I didn't stop. Couldn't. Finally, I reached a massive chamber at the center of the house. The heart hung suspended in the air. A monstrous, fleshy orb shot through with veins of black and gold. It pulsed in time with my racing heart, every beat sending tremors through the floor. And wrapped around it, whispering and writhing, was the Watcher. You cannot destroy what you are, it said, its voice thundering inside my skull. But it was lying. I remembered Amina's words. The eye sees everything. And I realized. The eye wasn't just an object. It was within me now. Could see. I raised my hands. Light exploded from my fingertips. Blinding, searing, pure. The Watcher screamed, recoiling, its tendrils withering in the light. The heart shuddered violently, cracks spiderwebbing across its surface. I poured everything I had into that light. Every ounce of fear, every memory, every shred of humanity the Watcher had tried to steal from me. The heart burst apart in a shower of black ichor. The house groaned, walls splitting, beams crashing down. The Watcher howled, its form unraveling like smoke in a gale. And then, silence. I woke up lying in the middle of a grassy field under a clear blue sky. No house, no Watcher, no darkness. Just the wind and the sun and the sound of my own heartbeat. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was free. Or so I thought. As I sat up, I noticed something lying in the grass beside me. Mirror. And in its cracked surface, my reflection stared back at me. Only this time my eyes were black. First I told myself it was nothing. A trick of the light. A side effect of whatever nightmare I'd survived. But deep down I knew better. The blackness in my eyes wasn't fading. It was spreading. I stumbled away from the cracked mirror, heart hammering against my ribs. The field around me blurred, the sunlight dimming, twisting, souring into something sickly. The trees beyond the grass seemed to lean inward, branches grasping at the sky like pleading hands. I needed help. I needed someone to tell me I was still human. I needed to believe it myself. I found a road after what felt like hours of wandering. A lone car passed. A beaten-up sedan, its paint peeling, its tires hissing against the wet asphalt. I threw myself into the road. The driver slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop just inches from my knees. A woman jumped out, her face pale with shock. "Are you insane?" she cried, hurrying toward me. "You could have been killed." I need help," I gasped, sagging to my knees. Please help me." Something in my voice made her hesitate. Pity. Fear. But she reached out anyway, gripping my arm, pulling me toward the car. And as her hand touched mine, I saw it. A flash, like lightning behind closed eyes. Not of her life, but her death. She would die tonight. Alone. Screaming. Lost in a place no living thing should ever find. I ripped my arm away, staggering back. "I can't," I choked out. I'm sorry. I can't. Before she could ask anything, I turned and ran into the woods. The visions only got worse. Every person I passed, every living thing, I saw the end of them. How they would suffer. How they would be consumed. It was the Watcher's final gift. I had destroyed its heart, but in doing so, I had become its vessel. Its eyes were mine now. I wasn't free. I was worse than trapped. I was infected. Days bled into nights. I didn't dare return to the city. I stayed in the woods, in abandoned places, living off whatever scraps I could scavenge. The dreams came every night. Not memories, warnings. The Watcher wasn't dead. It was waiting, growing inside me. And it was only a matter of time before it broke free. One evening, while shivering beneath the ruins of an old cabin, I heard someone approaching. A step. Hesitant. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. A figure emerged from the trees. A girl. Not Amina. Someone new. She looked about 12. Her hair was tangled, her clothes torn and dirty. But her eyes, God, her eyes were clear. Human. She didn't speak. She only held out her hand. And in her palm rested a small object. A shard of glass. I knew instantly what it was. A piece of the eye. Take it, she said softly. It's the only way. I shook my head violently. No. Can't. I won't. If you don't, she said, voice trembling, you'll become it. Tears filled my eyes. Why me? I whispered. Why can't someone else? Because you saw, she said simply. You survived. And survival demands a price. I looked at the shard. It pulsed faintly like a living thing. I knew what would happen if I accepted it. The Watcher would be sealed inside me. Contained. But I would never be human again. Never truly free. An endless prison in exchange for the safety of others. It was no choice at all. With trembling fingers I took the shard. It burned my skin, sinking deep into my palm. I screamed as the fire raced up my arm, through my chest into my skull. And then, silence. When I woke, the girl was gone. The woods were empty. I staggered to my feet, feeling the weight of the shard inside me, fused to my very soul. The visions were gone. The endless hunger, the Watcher's will was contained. Now, I knew it would never truly die. I would carry it with me until the end of my days, a secret war raging behind my eyes. I was the jailer, the warden, the sacrifice. And somewhere in some forgotten place, another blind girl was waiting. Waiting for the day the prison cracked. Waiting for the day the Watcher was set free once again. I returned to the city months later. No one recognized me. I was just another face in the crowd. But I watched, always watched. Because now I understood what Amina had tried to tell me. Some things are never meant to be seen. And once you see them, they see you too. Forever.